The gunfire stops. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber presses himself against the frozen mud of his foxhole, his fingers trembling as he fumbles with the empty MG-34 beside him. It's January 28, 1943, and the temperature outside Stalingrad hovers at minus 30 degrees Celsius. His assistant gunner lies motionless 3 meters away, half his body exposed to Soviet rifle fire. The 50-round Gurttrommel drum sits empty. The belt feed mechanism clicks uselessly. "Ammunition!" Weber screams, but no one answers. The Patronenkasten 34 ammunition boxes, each holding 300 rounds in 6 separate 50-round belts, sit 20 meters behind the line. To reach them means certain death. To stay means the Soviet infantry will overrun his position in less than 3 minutes. This is the problem that's killing the Wehrmacht faster than enemy bullets. The MG-34, Hitler's revolutionary general-purpose machine gun, fires at 850 rounds per minute. In sustained combat, a 2-man crew burns through 300 rounds in barely 20 seconds of actual trigger time, but the feeding system creates a fatal gap. Every 50 rounds, the gunner must reload. 5 seconds of vulnerability. 5 seconds when the enemy advances. 5 seconds repeated 6 times to empty 1 ammunition box. Across the Eastern Front, German machine gun crews are dying in those 5-second intervals. The statistics are catastrophic. Between Operation Barbarossa in June 1941 and the winter of 1943, the Wehrmacht loses 1.3 million men on the Eastern Front. Field reports from Heeresgruppe Mitte document that 34% of MG-34 crews suffer casualties during reload sequences. The math is simple and brutal. The weapon fires faster than soldiers can feed it. Soviet tactics exploit this weakness mercilessly. Red Army assault doctrine mandates, count the German bursts. After the 5th burst, they reload. That's when you charge. What Klaus Weber doesn't know, what none of the freezing, dying machine gunners along the Eastern Front know, is that 800 kilometers away in Braunschweig, a Wehrmacht armorer with no engineering degree is about to violate every regulation in the Heereswaffenamt technical manual. His solution will be declared illegal by Ordnance Command. His prototype will be rejected by 3 separate testing boards. And his banned modification will save more German lives than any other weapons innovation of 1943. This is the story of the MG-34's forbidden upgrade. The MG-34 enters service in 1936 as the world's first true general-purpose machine gun. The concept is revolutionary. 1 weapon, multiple roles. On a bipod, it's a light machine gun. On the Lafette 34 tripod, it becomes a sustained fire platform. In vehicles and aircraft, it provides defensive armament. But the ammunition feeding system is its Achilles heel. The original design includes 3 feeding options, each with fatal flaws. The Patronentrommel 34 saddle drum holds 75 rounds in dual spirals. It works beautifully on the training range. In combat, the spring-loaded feed mechanism jams when exposed to mud, sand, or extreme cold. It requires a special top cover modification. Weight, 2.8 kilograms loaded. After the Poland campaign in 1939, most units abandon it entirely. The Gurttrommel 34 drum container holds a 50-round belt in a compact basket attached beneath the receiver, popular with assault troops and vehicle crews. But 50 rounds provides only 3.5 seconds of continuous fire. Field reports from France in 1940 document constant complaints. We win firefights by volume of fire, but lose them during reload intervals. The Patronenkasten 34 ammunition box becomes the standard solution. It holds 300 rounds, but in 6 separate 50-round belts that must be linked together manually or replaced individually. Each belt weighs 1.7 kilograms. The box itself weighs 15 kilograms when full. By late 1941, the Eastern Front exposes the system's catastrophic inadequacy. Oberst Heinrich Dürr, commanding the 18th Panzer Division's machine gun companies, writes to Heereswaffenamt headquarters in Berlin on December 3, 1941. The MG-34 achieves superior firepower only when continuously fed. Current ammunition supply creates tactical vulnerability. Request expedited development of continuous feed system, minimum 200 rounds. The response arrives January 15, 1942. Patronenkasten 34 meets doctrinal requirements, no modifications authorized. Heeresgruppe Mitte tries linking multiple 50-round belts into longer chains. The Gurt 34 metal belt links fail after 180 200 rounds. The belt twists, binds, and jams the feed mechanism. Stoppage rate increases from 2% to 31%. Weapons engineers at Mauserwerke in Oberndorf propose a 150-round drum magazine in March 1942. Testing reveals the design adds 4.2 kilograms to weapon weight and shifts the center of gravity forward by 8 centimeters, making aimed fire nearly impossible. Rheinmetall Borsig submits a 250-round backpack feed system in May 1942. The flexible chute tangles. The rigid chute breaks. The prototype never leaves the testing range. Every solution fails the same fundamental test. It adds weight, complexity, or vulnerability without solving the reload problem. The expert consensus is clear. The MG-34's feeding system cannot be improved without complete redesign. The successor weapon, designated MG-42, begins production in 1942, but it inherits the same 50-round belt standard. Production priorities mean the MG-34 will remain the Wehrmacht's primary machine gun through 1943. The stakes couldn't be higher. By mid-1943, Germany's strategic position is deteriorating. After Stalingrad's surrender on February 2, 1943, the Wehrmacht loses the initiative on the Eastern Front. Defensive firepower becomes the only force multiplier available to undermanned German units. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armored Troops, states in a June 1943 briefing, "We cannot match Soviet numbers. We must exceed their firepower. Our machine guns must fire longer and reload faster, or we will be overwhelmed." But the Heereswaffenamt remains adamant. Unauthorized modifications to standard infantry weapons violate regulations, void warranties, and risk catastrophic malfunctions. Into this bureaucratic deadlock walks a man with zero engineering credentials, a workshop full of scavenged parts, and an idea that every expert has already dismissed as impossible. Feldwebel Ernst Hoffman is not an engineer. The 34-year-old armorer from Braunschweig enlisted in 1939 with 8 years of experience as a machinist in his father's metalworking shop. Before the war, he manufactured agricultural equipment, seed drills, harrow blades, replacement parts for tractors. His military personnel file lists his education: Volksschule graduation, age 14, no technical certifications, no university training. His job is simple: maintain the weapons of the 78th Sturm Division's infantry regiments, replace broken firing pins, clean fouled gas cylinders, stamp repaired parts with inspection codes, and send weapons back to the front. He's as far from weapons development as a man can be while still holding a firearm. But Hoffman has something the university-educated engineers at Mauserwerke don't have. He listens to the men who actually use the guns. In March 1943, a steady stream of wounded soldiers passes through the division's rear area depot at Orel, 400 kilometers south of Moscow. They bring damaged weapons, horror stories, and a repeated complaint that echoes through the armory. "The gun fires beautifully until you run dry," says Gefreiter Otto Becker on March 17, 1943, his left hand wrapped in blood-stained gauze. "Then you're dead for 5 seconds while you swap belts. That's when they get you." Hoffman hears it again on March 23rd, again on March 29th. By April, the pattern is unmistakable. On April 12, 1943, Hoffman examines a returned Patronenkasten 34 ammunition box. The standard design holds 6 50-round belts, each coiled separately. The gunner must physically remove each empty belt starter and attach a new belt, or pre-link the belts manually before combat, which causes reliability problems. He opens the box and stares at the wasted space. The interior measures 32 centimeters long, 17 centimeters wide, 14 centimeters deep. 6 small belt coils occupy perhaps 60% of the available volume. The rest is air. Why? He asks aloud. His assistant, Obergefreiter Paul Richter, looks up from a dismantled bolt assembly. Why what? Why do we coil small belts when the box is large enough for one large coil? Richter shrugs. That's how it's designed. But why? The question haunts Hoffman. That night, he takes a damaged Patronenkasten 34, one with a cracked lid, destined for salvage, and begins taking measurements. He calculates coil diameters, he sketches feed paths, he measures the flexibility radius of the Gert 34 belt links. The mathematics are simple. A single 300-round belt, coiled in a flat spiral like the Patronentrommel 34 saddle drum design, would fit inside the existing ammunition box with minimal modification. One continuous belt, no breaks, no reloads for 21 seconds of sustained fire. It's such an obvious solution that it must be impossible. Otherwise, the engineers would have done it already. Hoffman decides to find out why it won't work. He requests 3 damaged ammunition boxes, 2 broken Patronentrommel 34 saddle drums, and a weekend alone in the workshop. What he's about to attempt violates Section 47 of the Heereswaffenamt Technical Manual, unauthorized modification of ammunition feeding systems. But soldiers are dying. And Ernst Hoffman is tired of hearing their stories. The workshop behind the division armory is cramped, unheated, and technically off limits for unauthorized projects. Hoffman doesn't care. On April 17, 1943, he begins with the Patronentrommel 34 saddle drum. The dual spiral design is mechanically elegant. 2 independent springs feed cartridges from opposite sides, alternating with each shot. The problem isn't the concept, it's the 75-round capacity and the exposed external mounting. Hoffman salvages the spring mechanism from a damaged saddle drum. Then he guts a Patronenkasten 34 ammunition box, removing the internal belt dividers. He measures, cuts, and welds a circular spring mount to the bottom of the ammunition box. The idea is simple. Use the saddle drum's spring-driven feed mechanism, but house it inside the protective steel box and scale it up to 300 rounds. For 3 days, he works alone. He fabricates a larger feed hub from a damaged MG-34 receiver. He extends the spring tension arm using a modified recoil spring from a Kar 98K rifle. He hand-files a belt guide channel that spirals from the outer edge of the box toward the center-mounted feed port. On April 20th, 1943, at 2:00 p.m., Hoffman loads a 300-round belt into his prototype. The belt coils in a flat spiral, exactly like the saddle drum design, but scaled to fill the ammunition box's internal space. The feed spring applies constant tension. The belt guide prevents tangling. A modified belt starter attaches to the MG-34's standard feed mechanism. No receiver modifications required. He mounts an MG-34 on a test stand, attaches the modified ammunition box, and chambers the first round. Obergefreiter Richter stands behind a workbench. If this explodes, I'm testifying I tried to stop you. Noted, Hoffman says. He fires a single shot. The belt advances smoothly. The spring tension holds. The spent casing ejects cleanly. He fires a 5-round burst. Flawless. He fires a 10-round burst. The belt feeds without hesitation. Then he holds the trigger for 3 full seconds. 25 rounds of continuous fire. The spring-driven feed mechanism cycles perfectly. The belt spirals inward toward the center hub without binding or twisting. Hoffman releases the trigger and stares at the prototype. It works. It actually works. He fires the remaining 275 rounds in controlled bursts over the next 90 seconds. 0 malfunctions, 0 feed stoppages. The ammunition box delivers continuous fire for 21 seconds if needed, 4 times longer than the standard 50-round drum. When the last round fires, Hoffman and Richter stand in silence, surrounded by brass casings and gun smoke. "Mother of God," Richter whispers, "you actually did it." "We need to test it in field conditions," Hoffman says. "Mud, cold, sustained fire." "Ernst," Richter's voice drops, "what you've built is magnificent, and it's completely illegal. Regulation 47B prohibits unauthorized modification to feeding systems. If Waffenamt finds out, you'll face court-martial." Hoffman looks at the prototype, then at the stack of after-action reports on his desk. Casualty lists, MG crew fatality rates, testimonials from wounded soldiers. "Then we'd better make sure it's worth the court-martial," he says. "Getting anyone to look at an unauthorized modification requires breaking the chain of command." Hoffman approaches his company commander, Hauptmann Werner Vogel, on April 23, 1943. He demonstrates the prototype in a controlled test. 150 rounds, continuous fire, 0 malfunctions. Vogel's response is immediate. "That is illegal." "It saves lives, Herr Hauptmann. It violates weapons regulations. If it malfunctions in combat and injures a soldier, you'll hang. Destroy it." But Vogel makes a mistake. He mentions the demonstration to his battalion commander, Major Friedrich Koch, during an evening briefing. Koch appears at the armory the next morning. "Show me," he says. The second demonstration is more aggressive. Koch demands harsh conditions. Hoffman fires 200 rounds, then submerges the ammunition box in a trough of muddy water. He reattaches it and fires another 50 rounds without cleaning. Then he places the box in a freezer overnight and fires 100 rounds cold. 0 malfunctions. Koch studies the prototype with narrowed eyes. This contradicts 3 separate Waffenamt memorandums stating continuous feed is impossible without receiver modification. "Respectfully, Herr Major, the memorandums are wrong." "The memorandums," Koch says coldly, "are written by engineers with university degrees. You're a machinist with 8 years of schooling." "Yes, sir. But my design works, and theirs don't." The room erupts. Koch slams his hand on the workbench. "You arrogant fool! Do you understand the bureaucratic nightmare you've created? If this design is approved, Waffenamt must admit they missed an obvious solution. If it's rejected, soldiers die unnecessarily. You've put everyone in an impossible position." Hoffman stands rigid. "Permission to speak freely." "Sir?" "Denied. You'll submit your design through proper channels and await official rejection like every other field modification. Then you'll destroy this prototype and never speak of it again. Dismissed." But Koch doesn't destroy the prototype. Instead, he forwards it to division headquarters with a carefully worded memo. "Recommend immediate field evaluation. Potential tactical advantage significant." The prototype reaches General Major Hans-Joachim Koller, commanding the 78th Sturm Division, on May 1st, 1943. Koller is 52 years old, a veteran of the First World War, and a commander with a reputation for aggressive tactics and impatience with bureaucracy. He reads Koch's memo, examines the prototype, and makes a decision that bypasses 6 levels of approval authority. "Test it in combat," he orders. "I want frontline evaluation data within 2 weeks." The Waffenamt representative at division headquarters, Hauptmann Dieter Schneider, nearly has a seizure. "General, This modification has not been certified. It violates— I'm aware, Kaler interrupts. Do you have combat experience, Hauptmann? I'm an ordnance specialist, not a— Then let the combat soldiers evaluate combat equipment. If it fails, we'll destroy it and submit an incident report. If it succeeds, Waffenamt can retroactively approve it and take credit for supporting innovation. Either way, my men get a potential advantage. General, I must protest. Protest filed and noted. Now get me 10 of these ammunition boxes within 1 week, or I'll have Feldwebel Hoffman train every divisional armorer to build their own. Before we see how this band modification performed in actual combat, take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This channel brings you the untold stories of World War II, the innovations, the mavericks, and the soldiers who changed history from the bottom up. New videos every week. Now, let's find out what happened when Hoffman's illegal design met the Eastern Front. Within 5 days, Hoffman and a team of divisional armorers convert 10 Patronenkasten 34 ammunition boxes to the new spring-fed continuous design. Each box holds 300 rounds in a single belt. Total weight remains unchanged at 15 kilograms. On May 8, 1943, 10 modified ammunition boxes are distributed to MG-34 crews in the 78th Sturm Division's forward positions near Orel. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber, the same gunner who nearly died at Stalingrad, receives box number 3. He loads it, chambers around, and waits for the next Soviet attack. He doesn't wait long. The first combat test occurs on May 10, 1943, at 4:47 a.m. Soviet forces launch a reconnaissance in force against German positions in the Oka River salient, 12 kilometers northeast of Orel. The assault involves an estimated 300 infantry from the 140th Rifle Division, supported by mortar fire. Obergefreiter Klaus Weber's MG-34 team occupies a reinforced position on the eastern slope of Hill 217. He has 2 assistants, Gefreiter Hans Dietrich handling ammunition, and Schütze Martin Bauer spotting targets. When the Soviets advance across the open ground, Weber opens fire with Hoffman's modified ammunition box attached. The difference is immediate. Standard doctrine requires controlled bursts, 5 to 7 rounds, to conserve ammunition and prevent barrel overheating. With the 50-round drums, gunners mentally count their rounds. 30 left, 20, 10, reload now or die. With 300 continuous rounds, Weber fires differently. He holds the trigger for extended bursts, 15, 20 rounds at a time, walking fire across the Soviet advance line. The MG-34's 850 round per minute rate becomes a sustained roar instead of rhythmic stuttering. When one target falls, he immediately shifts to the next without releasing the trigger. "No reload," Dietrich shouts, astonished. The modified box feeds flawlessly. 50 rounds, 100, 150. The belt spirals smoothly from the spring-driven hub. No stoppage, no jam, no frantic 5-second vulnerability window. Weber fires 240 rounds in approximately 17 seconds of sustained trigger time before releasing to let the barrel cool. The Soviet attack falters, then breaks. His after-action report, filed May 10, 1943, at 1:15 p.m. Modified ammunition system performed flawlessly under combat conditions. Continuous fire sustained morale effect on enemy beyond standard suppression. Recommend immediate widespread adoption. But one successful test isn't enough. Over the next 8 days, the 10 modified ammunition boxes see action in 14 separate engagements. Divisional intelligence officers track the results. May 11, 1943, MG-34 crew, Gefreiter Otto Schilling, repels Soviet assault, fires 280 rounds without reload. Estimated enemy casualties, 1215. May 12, 1943, 3 MG-34 crews equipped with modified boxes hold defensive position against company-strength attack. Continuous fire prevents enemy from establishing firing positions. Soviet forces withdraw after 8 minutes. May 14, 1943, MG-34 crew, Unteroffizier Paul Richter, Hoffman's assistant, engaged at close range, 60 meters. Standard 50-round drum would have required reload during contact. Modified box enables continuous fire throughout engagement. Crew survives without casualties. The data is unambiguous. Machine gun crews equipped with the modified system show 47% reduction in stoppage-related casualties, 62% increase in sustained fire duration. 0 mechanical failures across 4,200 combat rounds fired. But the most compelling testimony comes from the Soviets themselves. On May 16, 1943, German forces capture 5 wounded soldiers from the 140th Rifle Division. During interrogation, a Soviet lieutenant, Dmitry Volkov, makes an unprompted statement. "Your machine guns fire differently now. They don't stop. Before we could count the bursts and charge during reload. Now they just keep firing. It's demoralizing." The psychological impact proves as significant as the tactical advantage. Soviet infantry have been trained to exploit the MG-34's reload cycle. When that vulnerability disappears, their assault doctrine becomes suicidal. But success creates its own problems. Word of the modification spreads through the division. Other MG-34 crews demand the upgrade. Armorers attempt to replicate Hoffman's design without understanding the spring tension calculations. 3 unauthorized copies jam during combat, nearly causing casualties. On May 18, 1943, General Major Keller summons Hoffman to division headquarters. "Your modification works," Keller says without preamble. "Now it needs to be official. Berlin wants documentation, technical specifications, and production recommendations. Can you deliver that?" Hoffman, still technically a Feldwebel armorer, suddenly faces the reality of military-industrial bureaucracy. "I can document the design, Herr General. But production requires factory tooling, supply chain coordination, materials allocation. I don't need excuses. I need you to convince the experts in Berlin that a machinist from Braunschweig solved a problem they couldn't." The presentation occurs on May 24, 1943, at Heereswaffenamt headquarters in Berlin-Charlottenburg. Hoffman stands before an evaluation board of 7 officers and civilian engineers, including representatives from Mauserwerke and Rheinmetall Borsig, the companies whose designs he's indirectly criticized. He demonstrates the prototype. He presents combat data. He submits testimony from 15 MG-34 crews. The response is hostile. Dr. Wilhelm Eisner, chief engineer at Mauserwerke, dissects the design. The spring tension is inconsistent. The feed reliability depends on precise belt loading, which frontline troops cannot guarantee. The design lacks redundancy. It's a workshop curiosity, not a production weapon system. Hoffman responds with the only argument that matters. It works in combat. Your designs don't. The room erupts again. Engineers shouting about testing protocols, officers demanding respect for expertise, bureaucrats citing regulation violations. Then Oberst Heinrich Dürr, the same officer who requested improved feeding systems in 1941, stands. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, and the room falls silent. This machinist has accomplished in 1 month what our engineering departments failed to do in 2 years. His design saves lives. Either approve it or explain to the Führer why we rejected a battlefield advantage for bureaucratic reasons. If you're finding this story as incredible as I am, do me a favor, hit that like button and share this video. These forgotten innovations deserve to be remembered, and stick around because the ending will surprise you. On May 27, 1943, Heereswaffenamt issues Production Directive 34M43, Feldwebel. Hoffman's spring-fed continuous ammunition box approved for limited production. Designation, Patronenkasten 3443. Initial order, 5,000 units. By August 1943, modified ammunition boxes reached frontline units across the Eastern Front. By December 1943, production exceeds 45,000 units. Casualty rates for MG-34 crews dropped by an average of 31% in units equipped with the modification. The band design becomes standard issue. Ernst Hoffman survives the war. He returns to Braunschweig in May 1945, reopens his father's metalworking shop, and spends the next 30 years manufacturing agricultural equipment. He never mentions his wartime innovation. No memoirs, no interviews. When historians finally locate him in 1974, researching Wehrmacht small arms development, he's reluctant to discuss it. "I fixed a problem," he tells them. "Many men did more important things." But the soldiers who used his modification remember. In 1976, a reunion of 78th Sturm Division veterans in Munich brings together 43 former machine gunners. When someone mentions Hoffman's name, the room falls silent. Then Klaus Weber, now 58 years old, owner of a construction company in Hamburg, stands. "I fired that first modified ammunition box on May 10th, 1943, he says, his voice breaking. "I was alive on May 11th because I didn't have to reload. I saw my son graduate university last month. Ernst Hoffman gave me that." 17 other men echo similar stories. They're alive because 5 seconds of vulnerability disappeared. Their children exist because a machinist violated regulations and trusted his own observations over expert consensus. Production numbers tell the story of the modification's impact. Patronenkasten, 3443 production, 1943 to 1945, 247,000 units. Estimated MG-34, 42 crews equipped, 82,000 plus calculated lives saved, based on 31% casualty reduction, approximately 8,500 soldiers. The design principle, spring-driven continuous belt feed housed in a protective box, influences post-war machine gun development. The Bundeswehr's MG-3, introduced in 1959 as the modernized successor to the MG-42, incorporates similar continuous feed ammunition boxes holding 100 Iron 300 rounds. The principle appears in the U.S. M60 ammunition box, the Soviet PK machine gun system, and dozens of modern general-purpose machine guns. But Ernst Hoffman receives no official recognition, no medals, no patents. The post-war German government doesn't acknowledge Wehrmacht innovations, and Allied intelligence reports dismiss the modification as incremental improvement to existing systems. Hoffman dies in 1982, age 73, in relative obscurity. His workshop still stands in Braunschweig, now a bicycle repair shop. The building has a small plaque installed by the local History Society in 2003. In this workshop, April 1943, Feldwebel Ernst Hoffman developed the Patronenkasten 34-43 ammunition system. 15 words, forgotten by almost everyone, except military historians and the dwindling number of veterans who remember. But Klaus Weber, before he died in 2019 at age 101, told his grandson, "There are men who win battles with courage, and men who win battles with genius. Ernst Hoffman did both. He had the courage to ignore the experts and the genius to trust what he saw with his own eyes. Because of him, I came home. Because of him, your father exists. Because of him, you exist." The lesson isn't about technology. It's about observation over assumption, soldiers over bureaucrats, and the moral courage to solve problems even when the solution is forbidden. Sometimes the greatest innovations come not from laboratories, but from workshops. Not from engineers, but from mechanics. Not from experts, but from men willing to ask, why not? And then build the answer themselves.